Hi, this is Dr. Mark Agresti, and I'm sitting with my student, Emma Lang, and I am going to do a brief discussion on the Therapeutic Alliance. And I'm going to try and make contact with the camera and teach Emma. So, Emma, we're talking today about the Therapeutic Alliance, and that is the relationship between the doctor and the patient, or the therapist and the patient. And within that relationship is the healing process. And within that relationship is how the therapist heals the patient. So what are the most important things about the Therapeutic Alliance? Let's take number one. What's empathy? What does that mean to you?
Feeling for the person, concern, but understanding at the same time, just reciprocating positive feelings.
That's really good. She's a good student, by the way. Empathy is putting yourself in someone else's spot, and that's not so easy. So you must have, this is critical because you're going to build a relationship with someone. You have to have an understanding of what's going on in their head and what they're experiencing. So don't immediately assume it's what you think they're going through. You have to be in their head. It's not about what you're feeling, it's about what they're feeling. Someone may experience something, and to you it says, well, you know, your pet died. I'm sorry to see that. Your pet lizard died. But to them, that could be the only friend they ever had in their life. So let's make sure you have to ask questions and be really in tune with what's going on in their head. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And the next key thing would be interest. You have to sit down when you're with the patient and have an interest in what's going on with them, what's going on with every aspect of their life. It may not be interesting to you. It doesn't matter. It's what's interesting to them.
Mm-hmm.
What else can we say about interest? That's not so easy because you may be distracted by your own interests, and you have to think your own internal operations, what's going on, and you have to, at least through supervision or through self-monitoring, control what you think is interesting. It's what the patient thinks is interesting. If the patient is into, I have one patient into penny candy, candies for 5 cents, and he runs a store of candy. Well, he likes talking about it. Someone's in construction, someone's into art, someone's into collecting dolls. Well, let them talk about it.
Okay.
Because it means something to them. That's self-explanatory. But the way you do that, express interest, is through probing questions. And not just one. So this is the general wave. And, some of this will be repetitive, but the relationship, if we were to talk about therapy or engaging a patient in a therapeutic process, the Therapeutic Alliance, I would say, is 80% of what you need to know. And if you just know this, you'll be successful. Mm-hmm. So this is the key thing. The Therapeutic Alliance is the key. You have to be vigilant and always maintaining it. And it's like maintaining a very fancy car. It needs a lot of work, a lot of attention, and attention to detail. A positive regard. You must hold the patient in positive regard, and you must create an environment where they hold you in positive regard. Any thoughts on that? Is that pretty much clear?
What do you mean, by that?
You want to have a positive attitude towards the patient.
Mm-hmm.
That's very good. That's very interesting. Oh, I find that, and without being fake. You must have genuine interest. And this will be repetitive because some of these are cross issues, but
helps cooperation, things like that. Yeah.
Right. You have to maintain a positive outlook towards patients, so and hopefully it's critical that they have a positive outlook towards you.
Right.
And just the way I'm talking now, my hand gestures, I want you to notice that because that's how I want you to interact with the patients. Okay. You're not going to be a robot. You're not just going to sit there and be like the little beagle listening to the Victrola. Remember? I don't know if you ever seen that where he just sits there. You're engaging. You're interactive. This is what we're talking about. This Therapeutic Alliance spans supportive psychotherapy, psychoanalytic psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, crisis intervention, chemical dependency counseling. All those require, even psychoanalytic psychoanalysis requires a strong therapeutic alliance. Where were we? Did we do understanding? Have we done that one?
Nope, not yet.
So understanding. You must understand what the person's saying, and it's not always clear. Maybe explain that again. Ask probing questions. What do you mean by that? It will not be clear. It is your job to understand them. It is not their job for them to make you understand them. It is your job to understand them, and it's not clear. It's not always going to be obvious to you what they're saying. You know, there's the subtext, the text, and there's different levels of understanding, and you need to delve into all of them. Otherwise, you're not going to be effective.
Right.
If you think you're just going to take someone at face value, oh, I'm doing great, that's not understanding. Well, the way you said it, the body language, the way you said you're great, you know, I'll talk more about intuition, insights, and conclusions, but understanding, we're not letting you off this so easy with this one. There's more to understanding. So you understand the concept of latent content, subtext, where someone may say something, but that may not be what they mean.
Exactly.
It's your job to tease it out. It's not their job to. You have to be. So when you're sitting with, you know, patients who volunteer to sit with you, you're not going to just let them say things, and you're going to ask probing questions and try and understand them.
Mm-hmm.
How'd it go when you met with that one patient who was the artist? Were you able to yesterday? Were you able to get to some understanding where he's coming from?
Yeah, I mean, he was a talker, so it was easy to kind of ask questions for him to kind of talk more about what he means, just to get a deeper understanding.
Yeah. There's also the structure of someone's life,
mm-hmm.
and you have to keep everything in perspective and place what they say in perspective to what they're actually doing, and to come to some understanding. But she saw a patient, and I'm going to talk more with her about that later. It's up to the therapist to be a good listener.
Mm-hmm.
So your job is not really to talk. Like I'm blabbing right now because I'm kind of teaching, but you would never talk this much.
Sure.
It would be reverse roles. If I would be the patient, I would be probably talking almost as much as the patient would.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't be talking this much. I'm trying to get Emma ready to actually sit with our first patient, feel comfortable, and she has to understand the concept of the therapeutic alliance before she could sit with a patient. Otherwise, if this is disrupted or if this is any way affected, you're useless. The patient will never speak to you again. It will not be in an environment where you create this therapeutic alliance that's useful and therapeutic. So if these rules are ever violated, especially before you've established a therapeutic alliance, you could make a mistake later on in therapy. And the patient, and once you see you made a mistake, I made a mistake, but not at the beginning. There's no mistakes at the beginning. When your first interaction with the patient, there are no mistakes. Mm-hmm. So if you're not sure, ask a question. Don't make conclusions initially, and follow these general guidelines. You know, nothing's for black and white here. So be a good listener. Now, what does being a good listener mean? You know, if you just sit there and listen, it's condescending. It implies distraction. It implies you're not invested in the case. Mm-hmm. So be a good listener means appropriate body language, nods, mm-hmm. and the appropriate question at the appropriate time where you're right in tune with them. And eye contact, body language, tone in voice, mm-hmm. hand movements, how you're taking notes. And if you think, you know, the way you're taking notes, you know, people will be like, oh, he or she took a note. The therapist took a note just then. They could become anxious or alarmed. So you have to be careful. I take notes when I'm with a patient, but you got to be careful when you take a note. So when you're listening means you're processing information. Mm-hmm. You just need to be very vigilant of that.
Attention to detail, yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is about attention to detail. And we're going to get into every little detail. This mm-hmm. is what to do. And a little bit, I'm going to get into what not to do. So it's up to the therapist to acquire the appropriate skills, the knowledge, to keep up with reading, to know the chart, to know the patient, to remember the patient. Your job is to become skilled, and you have to do everything you can, and it's a learning process, and each day you get better.
Okay.
Right? Remember when you first came, you're getting more sophisticated. Mm-hmm. And through desensitizing yourself to multiple people and practicing and talking to multiple people, you're going to get that. Like, you're going to sit with someone today, and if you're nervous, they'll pick up nervous. So body language, tone and voice, hesitancy, how you hold your muscles. We're going to get more into body language, but so you have to be relaxed. And I don't mean relax. I want you to hover above people and listen. And when you're completely confident, or if you don't know something, you have to ask. You can't be fake.
Right.
So that's the next one would be the right level of warmth. That's pretty much self-explanatory, but there has to be some warmth. This is not mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
You're either all in or you're not in. You're not going to be effective. You're going to be the best therapist you can be, or don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you must realize you're with a person who's genuinely suffering. No one comes to therapy because everything is great. There has to be a level of warmth and a level of, simpatico. Through understanding, you express warmth, and through questions. And there's generally times people say sad things, and you have to respond appropriately. Right. We're going to get into the use of humor in this. This is not a funeral. We are trying to get people better, so there is room for animation. Mm-hmm. Use of nonverbal communication. This is the hardest thing for me to teach. So, nonverbal communication. How are you sitting? How are you holding your arms? How are you moving your hands? When are you taking notes? Your eye contact, your hair movement, your neck movement, your body posture. Are you going to sit like this, or are you going to sit engaged? And your muscles have to be activated, because that means you're genuinely responding. How about like me right now? I'm expending a lot of energy. My torso is pretty much tight, and I'm moving my hands. I'm engaging them. This is what I'm talking about. Your verbal language. Your verbal language right now, right? You're
attentive.
You're not hungover. You're giving me good eye contact. You smile appropriately, ask appropriate questions. You're taking notes. You're interactive. Mm-hmm. You're in tune with what's going on. Don't forget this. You're going to sit with a patient today. You're going to have to be on top of this. Be very aware of nonverbal. And, with nonverbal, I'm going to get into dress, but we'll do that. That's down the road. Okay. But the verbal, we got this. So, how are you going to hold your legs? How are you going to hold your arms? I'm not being too overly detailed, but it's important. If you move your hands too much or high, that could imply you're going to hit them, or they got hit in the past, or, keep your arms like this. This is not an aggressive posture. This is. Mm-hmm. If you go, hey, what's the matter with you? Don't do that. But keep your arms not in a strike position, but, And your voice, your tone, how you move your arms. It can't be robotic. It can't be faked. I don't want that. I want it to be natural. Mm-hmm. So your personality and you is an asset. So when you're sitting with this patient today, your personality is going to have to come out. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. Right. If you're going to be robotic, and you're going to be formulaic, and it's not going to work. Just talk like you're talking in a very casual way, because it's threatening. It doesn't allow for openness. Just your expressions, your questions, your listening. But the nonverbal cues are critical. They're probably more critical than what even the content. People remember how you sat. Mm-hmm. And if you were animated or something, she was, she seemed distracted today, or she seemed very tense, or she seemed quick, or she didn't seem like she had time to listen, or she wasn't listening to me, or, And if someone mentions something, change behavior if they find something stressful, and they will.
Mm-hmm. What about kind of adopting the way that they sit, like their type of posture, if that makes sense? Kind of mimicking behavior as you would kind of mimic their language.
That's a good question. So we don't talk down to people. Mm-hmm. We use their language, but we don't want to become a mime.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, you have to be an individual who has individual speech, individual hand characteristics, but we won't talk in complicated psychotherapeutic words with patients.
Right.
I mean, you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, their language, you want to make sure they understand and bring the language to where they can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And through experience, I would say you can never give too much, you can only give too little. So I always try and challenge people and bring them up and educate, but I'm not going to talk like I'm speaking to another therapist or another psychiatrist.
Okay.
I don't know, did I answer that question?
Yeah.
You don't? You use words that they use, but you don't want to adopt their behavior because they're coming to you for a therapeutic interaction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hope I made that clear. Where are we now? Did we go to genuine? We did that one. Genuine is be upfront, truthful. Mm-hmm. Listen, if you get a bad phone call or you get something that distracts you and you look stunned, you need to say, I just got a phone call, my pet died, or
Mm-hmm.
I just got a phone call, my so-and-so had a car accident, or, sometimes it's better to be genuine than to be fake and false.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to disrupt this therapeutic alliance, and everyone has stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, say people with emotional illnesses are very insightful, and they're going to call you out. You don't seem right today. You're right. I'm a little off today. Today's the anniversary of my mother's death, or this is my pet died today, or I had an accident on the way to work today, but I'm fine. Yes, I'm fine, but let's focus on you now. Sometimes you don't want to give too much information about your life. You really don't. There has to be a boundary. But sometimes if people call you out and they can see you're not right, and there will be a moment when it happens, better off be prepared than not be prepared. Mm-hmm. And it actually enhances the therapeutic alliance.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's better than being fake, like, oh no, I'm fine. It's obviously you're not fine. You just turned pale, I mean, one day my wife called me up and she said, oh, the dog drowned in the pool today. And I was with a patient in therapy, and I said, my dog drowned in the pool. It's okay. It was an old Maltese. I'm over it. Not that I'm over it, but it's upsetting, but I'll deal with it. Let's go on. Now, good recommendations. If you're not sure about a recommendation, don't do it. And this, I would, for now, this is a whole nother lecture. It's called making a conclusion or making a recommendation. You have to be totally sure. If you make the wrong recommendation, let's say a patient comes in, he's dating a stripper. Well, that's what he likes doing. Am I supposed to say, I don't want to be judgmental and I don't want to make recommendations saying, don't date the stripper? He likes strippers.
Right.
Or someone who's dating someone who is a control freak. That may be what they like. It's not up to me to make a recommendation that's wrong. Mm-hmm. So with these recommendations, this goes to the next point. If you're not 100% sure mm-hmm. about your insight, I had a woman who's been in therapy every week for 2 months. And this woman is gay. But she tells me I'm not gay. But she's living with a woman for 7 years. She's attracted to women. She only sleeps with women, but she tells me I'm not really gay. It's not up for me to tell her she's gay. It'll disrupt the therapeutic alliance. Right. I tell her, that's a possibility, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And you have to be careful. Your insights, if you're wrong with an insight too early in the therapeutic alliance, you will destroy it. Mm-hmm. So before you make a statement or a judgment, and I'll get into areas where your judgments are impaired by your own internal psychological operations, mm-hmm. where your past events and your previous relationships are your perspective. And just because they're yours doesn't mean they're right, doesn't mean they're wrong, but you have to be very careful not to use that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Is that?
Mm-hmm.
I think I could have said that better. I'm trying my best here. Listen, it may not be the best video, but I'm trying. The next one is being honest and sincere. If you're not honest, what's the point of you being there? Okay. I think you're better off to be honest, sincere. And they ask you, what do you think? And say, you got to say, at this point, there's some yes and no's here. I'm saying, listen, I don't like your drinking. I don't like you smoking tobacco. I'm not someone's mother, but if someone smokes marijuana before they come to a session, you're like, you smoked marijuana this morning, or you drank before you came. That's not a good thing. I mean, there's some clear things where you make statements and recommendations that you have to.
Would you ever show kind of disappointment or anything for that sort of thing?
You have to be careful, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, you say disappointment is almost a parental role.
Right.
You're not a parental role. You're a therapist. View yourself as helping the patient to gain insight into their own issues to improve them. And instead of showing disappointment, you say, when you get high, can you process information as well? Or do you find... when you get high, does it interfere with your thought process? Or when you get high, have you noticed that you're not as alert as you were? Through a series of questions, and say, after we've discussed this getting high, had you thought maybe in the future getting high before a session is not a good idea? And, that's how it would be done. But to say, don't get high before you come, I don't know. Clearly, I say, listen, there's an educational component, there's a question component. Be very careful. This is a fine dance. And, the steps you take in the dance have to be just right. So it's not black or white. You follow me? So if someone did come in high and say, you seem a little tired today. Did you use any substance before you came? Yeah, I got high. I says, an educational point, people who get high are not fully in reality. It can interfere with your therapy, just to let you know. And I noticed that when you come this way, you're a little different, and you seem to be drowsing. You seem to be nodding off a little. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Hope it makes sense out there to everyone out there. So the next thing is, we talked about verbal but your communication, there's nonverbal communication and there's communication. I want an environment where there is communication, where you're actively engaged. It's not this, it's not this. It's you're on an equal footing. You're not Lord and Master, Supreme Being, giving dictums from heaven or superior power. No, none of that. It's two individuals exchanging ideas, and you are to function as almost to help the patient gain insight into what's going on so they can better deal with that problem. Think of it like that. There must be an environment created where a person can verbalize feelings and not ever feel they're going to disappoint you, judge you. You don't want to be in that situation. You're not a parent. You're not a sibling. You're a therapist. It's a totally different role. It's unique. And it is a therapist-patient relationship, and it is unique. Don't use previous relations, parent, child, sibling, aunt, uncle, friend. It's not that. It follows these rules, which are different. And you must say, this is a unique relationship where you can express your feelings, and I will not judge you. I will not lecture to you. I will not express disappointment. I will simply analyze this and help you gain insight so you can come to use your defenses to better deal with this issue that's disturbing you. Now, the therapist is a problem solver. So just to sit, if someone says, well, my car broke down, I don't know what to do. Well, let's see if we can come up with things. Could you take it to a shop? Well, I can't drive there. Well, can you get a friend? Can you take an Uber? Can you get a taxi? Oh, that's too much money. I don't know if I can do that. What about calling a tow truck? Or what about calling the dealership and they'll come pick it up? You can problem solve, right? This would be in supportive psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. Certain types of therapy, the patient has to problem solve for themselves, like psychoanalysis or psychoanalytic psychotherapy. And that's more advanced for Emma in this video, but I have to get into that with her later. But you can problem solve.
Right.
Like if you saw the patient yesterday, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to go home. Well, how did you get here? What about taking the same way you came? Oh, I'm afraid of the train, the traffic. Well, what about if you took a different route along the water? Or if you took this road to 95? And, I integrate the use of computers and computer assistants into all therapy. And if there's a problem or a word we don't know, it's okay to look it up. I don't stare at my computer, but if as the alliance and together you look something up together that you need, that's fine. Feel free. Listen, we're in an electronic age. It's okay to use a computer. I use iPads, and most people use their phone. I don't like typing. I never type with a patient. I don't ever want that noise of typing. I like writing. So when you're going to interact with the patient, write, that's fine. And if you need assistance of information or a definition, you want to look it up on your phone, fine. Okay, cross-cultural sensitivity. So Em and I are Caucasians, and I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm guessing, because I'm a psychiatrist, either, the Judeo-Christian background, but that doesn't mean that's good or bad, or that's not how everyone thinks, and you have to learn. It is as much a learning process for the therapist as it is the patient. If someone comes in, I'm from Ecuador, well, tell me about that. What are the customs? How are they different? You need to learn. Because through different customs, cultural sensitivity, you need to gauge missing dinner in a Panamanian household might be different than missing it in an Irish American household or a German American household or a Cuban American. It means different things in different places. Arguing with your mother in different cultures means different things, or point made. So I can't go through every culture, but you need to know what that patient's culture means to them. And, they say, well, I didn't show up for lunch with my third cousin. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
We talked about this. We're at number 18, by the way. We're talking about using the patient's language. You don't add sophisticated words from your education into the therapy. Use the patient's words. Oh, we're in talk therapy. Maybe they don't know what psychotherapy is. You want to explain it. So use their language. But we talked about this before. Don't mimic them with body language. Is that a distinction clear?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you sit with someone, this is a lot going on. And I want you to look at this as like a wave, because I don't want you to get mechanical. If you're trying to keep all this together and juggle all these thoughts, you'll get yourself into trouble. But at least you've heard it. So if the patient does challenge you, you'll be ready.
Right.
You seem distracted today, or why are you wearing that today? Or, yes, I was in a mood. I was in a different mood today. I wore this. Spirituality. It is not the place in the Therapeutic Alliance to discuss your religious beliefs. Only if asked can you discuss them. You're not here to make a sales job for any religion, for or against religion. But I think as a general rule, you cannot be biased by one religion or another. Just because you have someone doesn't, by no means should that ever, that's a complete disruptor. If you were to say, well, why don't you become a Protestant? That would be like a nuclear weapon going off in the Therapeutic Alliance.
Right.
No. We're not making a sales job. We're not selling a religion. But what we can do is to at least agree that there's some form of spirituality, and there are things which we don't understand, and there are greater forces out there than that we know of. And listen, that's a given, and there are. And if you don't believe that, where did the first atom come from? And you can't answer that question, can you? So there are forces we don't understand, and there are powers out there greater than us that we cannot understand. And, if people are going to email me and text me and, put comments on this video, it's not a religious sale here, right? It's spirituality. There are forces or powers greater than we know. Does that make sense? You with me? And you're always open for conversation with someone. And nothing's for sure. There is no black and white. Now, here's a big one. Appropriate boundaries. What does that mean?
You're not their friend. It's not.
Very good. She's a good student. So, you're not their friend.
Yeah.
You're not their lover. You're not their mother. You're not their brother. You're not their sister. You must keep that. And it's up to the therapist to maintain boundaries. Hey, why don't you meet for lunch? No, this is a professional relationship. Here's a gift for you. This gift is not of high monetary value. Fine, you accept it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't be accepting gifts. You can't be discussing your intimate problems with the patient. Your problems are not an issue with the patient. If they bring them up and they challenge you, say, do you have children? You answer. But you don't get in your issue with your son or daughter,
right,
or father or mother or boyfriend or girlfriend or lover or nothing. Appropriate boundaries, and this means appropriate dress, appropriate words, appropriate content. It's about the patient. And if it's not going to be therapeutic to that patient, you shouldn't be saying it. It's not about your issues. If they bring it up, though, listen, you can't be fake. You offer an answer that shows you're genuine, that shows you're there, that shows you're real, that shows you have the high regard and positive regard for this patient, and you're willing to tell them, but there's limits.
right. So honest and open, but no need to go into detail.
Yeah, let's just keep it. Do you have a family? Yes, I'm married with a child. Do you have your own home? Yes, I live in a home. Let's leave out where. Let's leave out descriptions. Because it's more important what they think, and you want to know what they think. And we're going to get, Em and I are going to discuss more about you want to maintain a blank blackboard and let them fill it in, because it's more valuable for you to know what they think than what you tell them. So this brings me to the next point. Am I losing you?
No,
with
absolutely
me?
not. Yeah.
I'm blabbing on here, and I'm not even seeing if you're losing me.
Oh.
Okay, so the next one is critical thinking. I shouldn't say but critical thinking means you have to be thinking.
Yeah.
This is not a casual conversation. They want you to be casual and have appropriate verbal and nonverbal communication. You are critically thinking, and everything you're thinking, and everything's a building block. And the critical thinking is, we are the sum of our experiences, and you want to know as much history as you can, and you want to know about every relationship that this individual has, which is significant, and try and superimpose all those relationships on the current content of their thinking at the current moment. And you want to know all their experiences, and you are trying to critically think and figure out what's going on now, what is causing this patient to be anxious or depressed. So you're never, it's draining. You are critically thinking. And you must be in the mode to critically think. You're not just sitting there listening. This is not a passive process. Patient may think you're sitting there listening, but you're not. You're thinking. Your brain is on. And you're rock and roll. You got to think and process what they're saying, compare it to the previous history, to put it into those. Remember we talked about the different boxes? You have to log it into, okay, this is parent-child relationship, this is sibling relationship, these are traumatic events, this is drug use, and you need to put all this together because you're going to have to make insights and conclusions later on. So you're not passive. This is not a passive process. You are actively, your mind is racing. You're trying to get all this down. Does that sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So the next part, this has components of a business relationship, and that business relationship must be clear-cut, it must have rules, it must not be ambiguous, and you must show a sense of competency. Mm-hmm. Sessions begin on time, sessions cost this much. If you miss a session and you don't give me 24 hours notice, you have to pay. If you're late, then you lose that amount of time. If I'm late, for whatever reason, you get that time back. Mm-hmm. And it is a business, and you must have clear business and follow business rules that are fair, honest, and clear-cut, because ambiguity causes anxiety. It implies that you're incompetent. It implies you can't follow through. It implies you don't care. The implications that you're disorganized. If you can't take care of your own business, how are you going to help me? Mm-hmm. You follow me? So I run on time. No one keeps waiting. I have strict business rules, and I keep to them. And I explain the rules to the patient. I have them in advance sign documents to the effect of those rules, because it implies a lack of caring, and it implies that I treat certain people different than others. That's not right. That would just annoy me.
Right.
Does that make sense? You with me?
Yeah.
So the business management, clear-cut rules, no ambiguity. Oh, now, here's a big one. I've been training people for 30 years on how to do this. And this is one thing, this is it. This is a tough one. You have to trust your intuitions, and they must be right. And if the therapist does not have good intuition, they're useless. You know, you must exhibit an intuitive sense and trust your judgments and hone in those skills. Because if you're not intuitive, and if you keep finding you're wrong, you maybe need to go another field. You know, I've had people who just their intuition was totally wrong, and I could not teach them how to form a therapeutic alliance, and they didn't. You know, I think if the patient wasn't on their insurance policy, they would never go see that doctor. You must have intuition. It must be right. Otherwise, don't do this. I can't teach that. So there you go. And also, this is not a non-creative process. You sit down, you're critical thinking, you must be creative because each solution for each patient is different. Mm-hmm. Problem solving, support their defenses, make appropriate insights, conclusions. You must be creative. Mm-hmm. And to go along with this is now the 20th component of the Therapeutic Alliance. Are you with me about it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you not experience any anxiety?
No.
I don't want to experience anxiety because I'm filming this. So you people out there watching, I'm trying to, I got to get her to learn this. So, you know, it's more for Emma today. But open-mindedness, creativity.
Yeah.
We did that?
Yeah.
Oh, strong sense of ethics. Don't do anything wrong. Keep a strong sense of ethics. That's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Don't do anything bad.
Yeah.
And then let's view the relationship as a holding environment where the psyche of the patient is sort of an abstract energy that is kept in this holding environment where you can heal them and you can use the therapeutic alliance to help bring about positive change in an individual. I don't mean to be vague with that, but you cannot have the sense where the patient doesn't feel cared for, listened to. It's, you follow what I'm saying on this one? The holding environment, all the things we've discussed must be maintained and nurtured so the patient feels there's an open environment that...
to help establish trust and...
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the next one, I think the holding environment, maybe it's redundant. No, that's its own little category. Let's go on to the next one. The therapist must self-monitor. So what does that mean? Oh, excuse me. So if you're self-monitoring, so if a patient brings up, let's say, a traumatic event, and you had the same traumatic event, maybe you had a terrible car accident, it's going to trigger off emotions that may distract you from the therapy. You have to be very careful. You have to know what your areas of sensitivity. Maybe you had a bad relationship with your mother and you didn't like your mother, and the therapist talks about her disliking or him disliking their mother. Don't fall into that trap. You must understand your own psychological operations, and you must understand the areas where you could become vulnerable and make a non-therapeutic statement. So, I mean, a lot of this requires your own therapy to know yourself really well. So you need appropriate supervision. So, for example, if Emma gets into a problem with a patient where she feels not therapeutic, she discusses it with a therapist, or she self-monitors. But you have to know yourself, and you have to know when emotional issues are triggered in you that distract you or make you emotionally driven and not critically thinking driven. It's going to happen.
Right.
Maybe you had an abusive boyfriend. Maybe you had an abusive lover. Maybe you had an overly indulgent, nice, friendly, overly involved father. Well, you need to be very careful. Don't fall into a trap and just assume that's good or bad. See what I'm saying?
Right.
Now, this process is not about creating dependency. It's about creating autonomy in the patient. You're not here so they depend on you for everything. That would be the worst thing. Throw it right back on them when they say, you seem to be asking me questions about every little aspect of your life. The goal of a therapist is for that. In the Therapeutic Alliance is for the patient to take on the role of therapist themselves. It's not for them to become dependent on the therapist. And if you see that happen, you have to point that out and stop that. You follow me? It's not a codependent relationship. They can't be coming to you for dependency needs to be met.
Mm-hmm.
You want to create a psyche in the individual you're treating where your voice goes off in their head or your type of thinking goes off in their head and they self-correct or they solve their own problems and they don't need you to solve the problems. The whole point of this is so they don't need you. You're not here to create dependency. Now, at some level, the therapist has to serve as a positive role model. You can't show up looking impaired. You can't dress inappropriately. You can't talk inappropriately. You must be alert. You must be well groomed. The therapist must advocate a positive, healthy lifestyle and live it. Otherwise, what good are you? Is that clear?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you want to see a therapist who comes hungover or a therapist who's got so emotional needs they start crying during... That's not going to work. You must be a good example. Mm-hmm. And being a therapist is not about being a weak person. It's about being a strong person. It's about being skilled and trained and understanding how you work. Now, being available. You must be available. I'm available to my patients with limits. I give every patient my cell phone number. I'm not advocating that for every therapist, but in my practice, that's how I do it. Mm-hmm. And I say, text me first, and if there's a problem and you're having a crisis, I'm available. I'm available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But if someone starts using me inappropriately, I'll say, well, it's inappropriate. You're using me too much, and that's therapeutic. If you don't set limits and you allow too much electronic communication or phone conversations, it's actually hurting the person. Mm-hmm. Follow me?
Keep the boundaries in check.
Keep the boundaries in check. Mm-hmm. And not every therapist would agree with me giving your cell phone, but it works for me. Right. And it works, and I keep boundaries, and I don't get called all the time. I really don't. And now, on the can-do list with the therapy, this is not a funeral. Mm-hmm. This is not a sad event. Humor can be used. If you're going to be stiff and not smile or laugh or engage in some form of, there's some banter that goes on that is just enhancing the therapeutic alliance, and you must be human because no one wants to talk to a computer. Maybe they do, but I don't think so. So if a patient says something funny or you could say something funny, it's okay to laugh. Mm-hmm. It's not a funeral. It's not some religious ceremony. Mm-hmm. It's two individuals forming a therapeutic alliance to make it healthy. So listen, there has to be laughter, animation. There must be creativity, individuality. It must be special for that person. It is unique to each one. And if you're not unique and you're not going to treat that person as an individual and their needs and what they find funny and not, there has to be smiles and laughter. When you greet someone, it's a smile, and let's at least try and be happy. Today I had therapy with someone whose mother died 5 days ago, and we managed to smile, and there was some laughter. He showed me a video of his friend came over and was doing a dance to cheer him up, and we both laughed. And that's what people do. And, I'm not going to sit there and nod my head, yeah. No, it was funny. She was like lifting her dress up, dancing. It was funny, so we laughed. But still, he's dealing with the death. He's a young man. He's only 22, and his mother just died. It's sad, but we try and have some laughter. Humor is to be used. And it's a powerful tool, and it's critical.
Right.
Okay, so now we went through the things you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that was about a list of 36 things for the Therapeutic Alliance. It's not complete. Emma's young. This is her first interaction with the Therapeutic Alliance. So this is not in depth. This would be just the beginning lesson. She's sophomore in college. So this is just a beginner's course. But she's had some experience, so I am getting involved. Okay, things to avoid. And we've discussed this, and things to do. Mm-hmm. Don't be judgmental. You do not judge people. You do not have your perspective. If someone is doing something, that you find right or wrong, you're not raising a child. Right. You're not there to judge. You are not ever to be condescending. This is not about that. You're not the superior intellect, the superior education to condescend down and, to preach to the masses. No. Right. You're on an equal footing, talking back and forth, exchanging ideas. And your opinions, you got to be careful here. Opinions about religion or politics or dating, or you have to be very careful. They're coming to see you to express opinions, but you're not trying to sell them on a particular way to think. But I have to be careful here, because certain things, like if you're drinking every night, well, that's not going to be good. That's not going to help. If someone is involved in therapy and then they escape from the interaction they had with you between therapy sessions, the therapy will not be effective. Right. So they smoke marijuana, use some drug because something uncomfortable came up in therapy. That's not going to work. So you have a strong opinion there. You say no as an educational component, but you don't say, oh, you should hate so-and-so, in politics, or you should be a socialist or a conservative. Oh, no. That would be opinionated. Mm-hmm. But in terms of education, there is right or wrong. Using drugs between sessions, not exercising your body. Everyone's definition of exercising is different, but they need to move. Not leaving the house and sleeping all day. There is some black and white here, some common sense issues. Right. Is that clear? So right. You're expressing, you educate, and you do have opinions, but you can't be opinionated. Mm-hmm. You see the distinction? There's a fine line here. Mm-hmm. Listen, you've come hungover, you come high. If you're using drugs between sessions, if you're not taking care of your body, if you're eating abusively, those aren't healthy things to do. I'm not judging you, but they're bad habits, and they're going to interfere with the therapy. Right. And they're going to interfere with your genuine things that interfere with the genuine well-being of someone. But, making judgments on who people date, their politics, their religion, how they spend their money. It's like if someone wants to go buy some expensive Chinese vase, it's not up to you to say that's wrong or right. Well, you like it, you like it. But if someone is spending all their money, doesn't have money for food, well, that's not good, right? Mm-hmm. Is that distinction clear? Yeah. Yes. That's pretty. No religious overtones. Mm-hmm. That's obvious. So we have spirituality, which is there's something greater than us, but there can be no religious overtones. Mm-hmm. This goes without saying. There's no racial overtones. That's just a given, right? Yeah. I just said it for general inclusiveness. Therapists can never be punitive. Mm-hmm. You don't punish, and it's real easy to punish. A look, a disappointed look, a disapproval look, or withholding of communication or warmth. You can punish a disapproving comment, so you'd be real careful. It's very subtle. Is that clear? Yes. You with me? Yes. I don't want to be vague, but so the next one would be poor boundaries. This is, don't bring up your personal life, don't bring up your religious life, don't bring up your finances, don't bring up your family life, your life with your pets, or don't bring up your personal issues. But if the patient asks, do you exercise? What do you eat? I think you need to, those questions I answer. Do you use drugs? I think you owe them an honest answer. And the answer better be no if you're a therapist. So, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honey, do you use drugs and alcohol? No. And if it's not, well, you better explain what you do, and it better be a good answer. If it's not, don't be a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't meet people after work. Don't meet people. Don't discuss intimate issues about your life with them. You can accept gifts of cookies, and some people made gifts for me, like made a painting, but anything of value, you really can't accept.
Right.
Don't be exploitive. Don't make the therapy about you. Don't satisfy personal issues, or don't resolve some issue you have in the therapy. That's not healthy. Always show interest. I said that. Obviously, don't ever be uninterested.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a big one. Don't be late.
Right.
If you say you're going to be there at 1, be there at 1. If you say you're going to be there at 12:30, be there at 12:30. If you're late, it means you don't care, you're not genuine, you got more things to do, you're preoccupied, your life is more important, that the patient has no value, you don't care, their time's not as valuable as yours. Don't be late. You're going to be a therapist, don't be late. If I'm doing therapy, I'm never late. And if I'm late, it's something serious happened.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point the patient knows if you're late and you've been late for 5 years, something is going on. So they're going to be very concerned. You better text them or try and get to them and explain it. You can't always, but once a therapeutic relationship's been established, something will happen. You get a ticket, you get stuck, Trump comes to town and they block the roads off and you can't move around Palm Beach County. Well, there's a good reason you're late. Because the motorcade kept Southern closed for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be distracted.
Yep.
That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Don't be biased. Oh, and here's another one. This is a good one. Know the reason you're interacting with the patient, there must be clear goals. You're here because you're depressed. You're here because you have anxiety. You're here because you have a problem with a relationship with your wife. You're here because you get anxious when you meet new people. You're here because you're just not happy with the way your job's going, or you're here because you keep whining in these relationships that are not rewarding. Mm-hmm. The goals or the reason the patient are there must be clear. They must be stated, and I write them down. Mm-hmm. I'm so clear, I word it to the exact word. What brings you here? These are the goals that we establish in the Therapeutic Alliance. Right. And they're written down. I write them down. And they should be done within the first couple of sessions. And they can change. There must never be sexual overtones. Mm-hmm. Let's be very careful. I don't like sexual jokes. The patient, they must feel comfortable talking about any aspect of their sexual life, but the therapist must be very careful about bringing their own sexuality or any sexual issues they have into the therapy. But the patient must be absolutely comfortable talking about any of their intercourse, their masturbation, anything sexual, because that plays into it. And here's the thing. People are shy about this. At some point in that holding relationship, in that alliance, you need to ask. Don't ask yet, though. That's another whole nother supervision session. This is brief. Each one of these is a lecture in itself. Mm-hmm. So don't ask anyone about. If they bring it up, fine. But don't be discussing any issues of your sexuality with the patient just yet. If they bring it up, don't be alarmed. Be totally comfortable. Let them discuss it. And 50% of people come in for therapy have been sexually abused. Now, how do I handle that? I ask them in their first session, were you sexually abused? They say yes. And the next question, you have to feel it out. Do they seem alarmed, or, who abused you and when and how long? And do you really need the details beyond that? You don't need explicit details because it's traumatic and it brings back. But I need to know, if the mother or father or sibling or they were raped or not raped, they were in prison. You need to know the general details. Let's not get too detailed with that. It's traumatic. I mean,
Right. Mm-hmm.
anyone who's had a traumatic event, you need to know the general issues of the event, but not the details, because you'll re-traumatize them. Be very careful with that. Like someone who has a war experience or a rape experience or a prison experience, it's very overwhelming to get too much of the details. So for now, but you need to know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the details, but this is a whole nother lecture. I'll get into this one later. So the next one, the therapist must be insightful into their internal psychological operations, and they must be aware on how their own internal operations reflect on what they say, and how the content and the patient that they're interacting with stimulates those previous experience the therapist has. We are the sum of our experience, so your previous experience bias, alter, shade you in a certain light. Be real careful. So that's more complicated, but you know, this whole talk is going to be an hour, so I'm running out of time, and that's much more complicated. Do you follow me on that one? Because you need to know what areas
Be aware of your biases, your experiences,
and how things affect you. And quite obviously, if you had a traumatic event and this patient has had the same traumatic event, that may be difficult.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that more later. But for this point, no, okay, this could be a dangerous time. This could be an area that could make a mistake. Because now I'm emotionally, this has triggered me. I have to be very careful with this.
Okay.
How you dress. It has to be professional, has to be neat, has to be clean, can't be sexually provocative, can't show too much of your body, must show you have attention to detail, you must match, those are some general guidelines. Is that clear? I mean, you don't want to be exposing some part of your body. You don't want to wear clothes that are too tight. You want to show that you're paying attention to what's going on. Don't nurture dependency. We discussed that under dependency. Don't have poor business practices. We discussed that. Oh, here's a key one. When you're going to meet with a patient, you must be prepared. What does that mean? Well, if you had to go to the bathroom, do it before. If you didn't eat something all day, make sure you have something in your stomach so your blood sugar doesn't drop. You are going to sit down with that patient, and that's their time. You can't be worried that you're hungry or that you're uncomfortable or, something's bothering you, or you make sure you're physically and mentally can sit there for an hour, and everything you need to take care of, you take care of. Be prepared for the session. And if you had to review the notes, review them before you get into the session. If you had to eat something or you had to make some critical phone call, you do it. Don't be preoccupied and rush through, or you'll make a mistake. And okay, that's going to sum up. That is, in conclusion, I will say, this was a topic of the Therapeutic Alliance and how it is the relationship between the therapist and the client, and within that relationship, how the therapeutic process takes place and how it benefits the patient in terms of the beneficial change. That's Dr. Mark Agresti, and there's more of this in my book, Tales from the Couch, on Amazon.com. And Emma Lane. Wave goodbye, Emma. Bye.